I mean, I went to the hospital multiple times thinking I had a stroke. So if you just like think about living that way and not knowing, it's terrifying. I still can't really write about that, like the whole head injury. I can't write about the pain.
Why not? It's too hard?
It really is tough. Like I can't, like I start thinking about it. I'm like thinking about it now and I'm like swelling up.
You were kind of a folk singer in Calgary and then you end up writing songs for other people, right?
Like, okay, yeah. I wrote songs for my own self-healing and they were like journal entries to me.
Yeah.
But then people kept asking for them. So I was like, I liked performing. I liked dancing, but I kind of also didn't see myself necessarily being in the spotlight. I wanted to be like a scientist or a geneticist or something. But before I ever made it to college for any of that, I got accepted without applying to a music college.
To Berklee, the big one,
well,
right?
that was, okay, so before that I went to Selkirk College in Nelson, BC.
Oh, okay.
My friends sent a demo CD to them and they like sent me a message being like, you're accepted. And I'm like, what? I never applied.
Yeah, right.
So I was like, that's a sign. And then within the first semester, I auditioned for Berklee and ended up getting almost a full scholarship there.
What did you audition on for Berklee?
A song called Super Glue that I wrote.
Okay, right. So you got in for that.
I got in for a song. It's on my first unofficial album that I put out with a professor.
With one of the professors at Berklee?
No, that was at Selkirk, actually.
Oh,
Jill,
it's Selkirk. Okay.
Who's actually coming on board. I'm going to be performing with the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra on October 5th, and we're reuniting for the orchestra scores for some of them, which is kind of cool.
So back to Hideaway, that thing comes out, and then it's pretty much 0 to 100, right?
Like a million.
You're sending a shiver up my spine, might overflow. You're bringing me closer to the edge of letting go. Oh, oh, you're just a hideaway, you're just a feeling. You let my heart escape beyond the meaning, pulling my head into the clouds, I'm floating home. When you get me going, I can't find a way to stop. Oh, oh, you're just a chance I take to keep on dreaming. You're just another day that keeps me breathing.
It was unusual because the song got playlisted as well. Like radio tends to happen where you like get, C, B, A-listed. It moves its way up. They test it out. It just got like everywhere. Just started playing it. We were trying to actually pace it a little more, and apparently my team was telling them not to add it right away, like just to like pace it. But people would rip it off the internet and throw it on anyways. Like they weren't listening. It was just this explosion.
And that song was supposed. The story I heard is that you missed a flight. You were working so hard on that song.
It was like the movie, the movie scenes where they're like, hold the flag.
Yeah.
And they're about to close the door. I literally screamed at the other end of I was like running down the hallway in the airport, like screaming like, don't close the door. And they heard me and they're like, ah. And I made the flight.
You were in the studio? You were in the studio working on it?
I was not in the studio. I was just picking something up at the studio. And Rami, the producer of Hideaway, was just kind of like, had heard some house music in the UK and that was really big. Mm-hmm. It was like blowing up at the time. And he had never produced a house track before. Mm-hmm. I had never written a house song before, which is kind of, I grew up on a lot of like big diva singers and soul singers, but this beat was playing and I'm literally trying to grab something and I'm like, oh, that's good. Like this melody starts coming to me and I was just like, can I just throw something down really quick? But I really got to go. So I literally freestyled the melody in like one take. We hacked up something and we're like, let's just put this, and this. And then I wrote lyrics in probably 5 to maybe, I don't even think it was 10 minutes because I didn't have that much time. And I was like, oh, I'll just fix them later. And it was like demo. I was like, I'll just put something down. Here we go. And it never changed. Like it was the fastest songwriting situation I think I've ever experienced. But he then went on to produce it for like 90 minutes total from start to finish.
Was there any ever talk of you giving that song to somebody else? Was there ever any talk of that going to another pop star or like a more established pop star?
There was one person who very early, but I was pretty convinced I was going to keep that right away.
Who can you tell me who
Mariah Carey
was going to record it?
They were thinking of pitching it to Mariah Carey.
Right.
But
and you said
she
no.
never even got it. Like it never made its way to her.
And did you say no? Like, no, I want it?
I knew, yeah. I was like, hold this one. I'm going to keep this one. It just sounded so good on my voice. And I had, I'd always write with the impression of trying to like really get into the songwriter I was writing for, like get into their soul and try to like really get to know them and get their tone of voice and try to make demos that would like sound close to them. But this one, like I just couldn't even picture anyone on it.
Yeah.
It really just, it was in an instant I just kind of knew that it was meant to be for me. But I did not think it was going to go viral or anything like that. That's for sure.
Give me an example of. I find when people talk to me about this stuff really, really interesting. So I'm working on something here. Like, give me an example of how your life changes when you have a big song like that.
Well, okay. So my life goal in life at the time was to play Wembley Stadium at some point at the end of my career, and I was on Wembley Stadium 4 months later.
With your opening or your own show? Or?
No, it was for a radio. Like it was like me, Ariana Grande, and like I can't even remember who else was on it. There's a lot of big artists, but I mean the fact that I was even on stage in a show with Ariana Grande, you know,
yeah,
like
4 months after you were just walking down the street going to the coffee shop.
I was about to get not deported, but my visa, because I was a student, and then my visa, I had 1 year work visa in the United States, and my visa was expiring. So and I was like, no, I've made all my connections in New York. I'm not ready to go home. And I wrote 50 songs in 1 month and pitched them to like publishers just to try to get a visa to stay in town. And that was around the time Hideaway was written, and I was going to LA to do all this like networking to try to get a publisher. And it was like no one. And people were like interested. And suddenly Kylie Minogue cut one of my songs, and then all of a sudden, it's just like, it's kind of like gambling in the music industry. They're like, who's the next big thing, next big writer? And suddenly they're like, wait, there's this girl, Kylie wrote her song. She doesn't have a publisher.
What song was that for Kylie?
You know, she didn't end up putting it out because the production was like a newer producer and they didn't end up wanting that production.
Uh-huh.
But it was Slow Motion Fighting, which I ended up putting out myself.
Oh, yeah.
Was that song. And yeah.
Is there a downside to a big hit?
Well, you can get pigeonholed into like, people want that over and over again. And in my case, yeah, there was a downside, but it was basically that the song was like far bigger than me as an artist. So connecting.
What's wrong with that?
Well, I mean, if you walk around right now and say like, if I can like walk around and be like, hey, my name's Kiesza, and have you heard of Kiesza? And people will be like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Have you heard of Hideaway? Yeah, I heard of Hideaway.
Does that bother you?
No, not at all. Honestly, there's something kind of nice about it too. I mean, I am a bit like, I have this weird, being such a songwriter, I have this introspective side to me that likes to disappear and hide. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think I would like to be out in the public eye, but I started seeing it as a bit of a performance. Like I do love to perform. Mm-hmm. So I was like, if I think of it like, okay, it's like a show, only just walking down the street, you know? Like I'll just put on my costume and I'll go walk down the street, and the show just kind of starts when I leave my house. So
you also said that people expect more of it from you. Does that mean like labels and stuff like that? They expect more of that kind of music from you, even if that's not what you want to make?
Like, okay, first of all, my label didn't even do house music, and it's just Rami, the producer, was an A&R on Island Records at the time, and so he was just like, you got to go with this label. And Hideaway actually blew up independently first, so I don't even know why I signed to a label, quite frankly. Right.
And then they were like, more of this, please.
You think as a new artist that you need to sign to a label, and that is so untrue. It is so, the world is so set up for indies right now, it's not even funny. Yeah. Like even the labels are just getting their artists to do TikTok. Yeah. So you don't have to sign away all your masters and stuff like that.
But so they were like at you to do more of that. They
wanted more Hideaway, but not Hideaway. The problem with Hideaway was everyone wanted it, but they didn't necessarily understand me as an artist or that kind of sound or how to push it. So Island was more like pop and stuff like that. So they didn't actually understand how to follow that up. So I learn a lot now. Like I used to be so mad at my labels and stuff, and now I'm like, you know, I wasn't right for that scenario. I'm actually so suited to be an independent artist.
The next chapter of the story that I've been thinking about with you is I'll sort of let you steer the ship here because I don't know what you want to talk about, what you don't want to talk about.
I'll talk. I'm like an open book right now.
You're cool to talk about
I mean, there's a lot of, even before the car crash. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was even like drama predating the car crash. Like right after my tour, my Sound of a Woman tour, my best friend passed away from cancer.
That messed you up?
Oh, it was the worst. Leading into...
Sorry, that sounds insensitive. Like I can't imagine how hard that was when you're in the midst of this.
She was like my twin sister practically. Right. Leading into my next album writing process. So I was in the process of writing my second album. And then I was in the car crash. And then around the same time, my producer of that album ended up dying.
So your
So it
best
was
friend
just-
died, your producer died, and you were in this.
And then I was in a
horrific-
car crash, and
Oh my God,
and
Kiesza.
literally myself as I knew it died. So my whole life just like was just tragedy for a while.
Do you remember the car crash?
I do. I mean, the only thing I don't remember is between the hit and the door. Somebody opened the door, and they definitely walked quite a few steps to get to the car. So there was I definitely blanked out for a few seconds.
Like, do you know what happened? Do you know where you were?
I wasn't driving. I was in an Uber.
You were in the back of an Uber.
The back of an Uber. I was on the left side, which like normally I like to be kind of opposite the driver
Yeah.
on the right side.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I had this sense to like, I was weird because I'm a bit OCD about balance. So I don't like to be right behind the driver because it's off balance. But I weirdly sat on that side that day, and there must have been some intuition, like I knew it was coming. Because had I been on the other side of the car, it could have been like way worse.
So the car gets T-boned in an intersection?
Yeah,
or?
cab just, I don't know if he just wasn't paying attention or if he was tired, or I don't know if he was drunk or not. He definitely got the worst of the accident, so I hope he's okay. But he was not looking, did not see the red light, and just went right into us. We had a green light. And he came so fast, we didn't like, I had enough time that my body instinctively curled up into a ball before the hit happened. I ended up punching myself in the skull and like.
You had enough time that your body kind of knew it was coming, and you were able to brace yourself.
Yeah, because your peripheral reacts so fast. Anything coming in
Jeez
your
Louise.
peripheral, so my body just seized up, went into a ball. But it actually ended up being worse for me because I ended up punching myself in the head, and hurting my wrist, and then like my head got impacted on two sides. So I had two sides of brain damage essentially and swelling, and I lost my balance on the left side of my body for quite a long time, which is why I really couldn't dance for so long.
Did you wake up in the hospital?
No, actually was it got worse progressively. I was in complete shock when I got out of the
Did you
car.
walk away? Were you able to walk?
I walked away and even got on a plane that night or in the morning. I can't remember. That was what I can't remember is like, what was it at night or in the morning? But I had arranged to set my best friend up with my other best friend to get married. I wanted them to get married. They ended up dead. They did.
That's
Thankfully, I went to New York.
Right.
But little things, so it's like a domino effect because your brain's all network based. So when one network shuts down, it starts shutting down other networks, which start shutting down other networks, and it becomes this like domino effect. So the second that I got on the plane started taking off, the pressure triggered. I wanted to throw up right away. And then going up and down was just horrible. Thankfully, it was a short flight. Then I got off the flight, realized I couldn't walk straight. It felt like gravity had tilted to the side and was like dragging me down. And I was like texting my friend like, hey, there's something up. I don't know what's going on. Like I was in this crash. Maybe there's something up. And I ended up going to the emergency room in New York, which sucks because I didn't have healthcare in New
You
York.
left the right.
Yeah.
You left the free healthcare here to go to.
to go to New York.
Yeah.
But it was, I was looking like, I was so scared because I didn't know what was going on.
Did you think you were going to die? Did you think?
Later on, yeah, I thought I was going to get a stroke many times because I'd have weird symptoms. Like one time, one of my pupils dilated and the other didn't, and sometimes half my face would go numb, and like sometimes I'd feel like my face was burning or my hand was on fire. Like I had all these random symptoms that didn't make any sense, but it's all just related to the brain trying to heal itself, or just things just not connecting right. Tons of pain. I developed a condition called suicide headaches, cluster headaches. Most painful
I've
headaches
heard
in the
of
world.
those, yeah.
Oh, they're the worst. They're literally the worst thing on the
I
world.
hear it's this unconscionable pain. Like
I read a science article, like a legit science article, and they listed that it's equivalent to getting shot in the head 4 times a day.
And can you take anything? Can you take anything?
No,
for it?
you can't. It just doesn't. Now some research is they're like seeing that mushrooms,
Yeah,
psychedelic
psychedelics.
mushrooms do help
Yeah.
with stuff like this, like medically. Like, but it's honestly no.
So
The
you were.
truth is no.
So you're going through all these horrific symptoms, and your best friend has died, and your producer has died. I mean, it must have felt like a real low point, if you don't mind me saying so.
It was. I couldn't even process it, honestly. Plus, I had a brain injury, so I couldn't even think my way through it. Because if I overthought things or got stressed, my brain would then swell. So I had to just stop everything, and then just lay in bed and like sit with this like emotion that I couldn't think my way through. I couldn't even try to. I couldn't like you're the weirdest thing about a brain injury is you can't do anything. You have to try to do nothing, even think. And that's what people don't really tell you about head injuries. Thinking is one of the hardest things on your brain. I couldn't be in a room with more than 2 people for almost a year. without my head swelling. Like just looking at another person or 3 people in a room was like too much for my brain to process. So it took me a while. I remember I made it. So it was July. You know what's so weird is I filmed Hideaway, the music video, on the same day, July 9th, that the car crash happened. So July 9th is a kind of a scary day
Different
for me.
year, but
Different year.
Yeah. Oh, July.
That
July
day.
9th was the day you filmed the music video, which was as big as the song itself.
Yeah. So the thing that like triggered the song to be as big as it was, like, and which made like was one of the most influential days of my life. If you really rewind, was on the same day of the year as the car crash, which is so weird.
You started to get some rehab and some recovery, and
I went through everything. I'm still doing rehab, honestly. I try everything. I even joined a neuroscience community where it's called Brain Mind. And I was like, the world's leading neuroscientists all get together at like Stanford and MIT, and they all discuss their latest findings and try to share information and advance neuroscience as much as they can. And so it was like, it's all for neuroscientists. And I weaseled my way into this community. So it was like me in there just trying to take notes and find anything I could. And some of them were trying to help me as well. So, I mean, I was a guinea pig. I offered myself up as a guinea pig to so many people.
Can I ask how you're doing now?
Oh, I'm doing a lot better. Thank you for asking. I still have the cluster headache, suicide headache condition. It's just not as often, but it does trigger unexpectedly. It could be literally the last time it triggered was when I went into a sauna. So like,
How long do they last?
they're not long. The level of pain that's like unbearable. Thank God. That level of pain is like 1 to 2 hours, but still like it's a lot.
Yeah, well, I thought you were going to say 1 to 2 minutes.
But there's a lingering pain that it's sort of like lasts for a few days.
But you said you're feeling a little bit better. You're feeling.
I used to have them every day, and now I get them it could be every few months, but they're cluster headaches, so that's why they come in clusters. So when one comes, it's like a machine gun, tons come. So I'm very robust emotionally now, and my pain tolerance is probably in the highest level in the world, quite frankly. Like,
Really?
yeah, like I don't react to pain. And that's actually, I was in a cluster headache like support group community, and that's one thing people talked about a lot was the fact that when you have this kind of injury or that you have this condition, you actually stop reacting to regular levels of pain. So you might actually be in pain, and you should go check it out, but you're not responding to it because your pain tolerance is so high that it doesn't actually register.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a run you've been on.
Yeah.
What a story you've had. I mean, had Hideaway happened alone, that would have been a story. But what a story.
I know. I think whatever I was doing before this life, I think I like decided to make my life really dramatic. Because even predating Hideaway, my life was intense. Like I was in the military and I was a tall ship sailor.
You're in the Canadian military?
Yeah, I was in the reserves. I joined when I was like 16, turning 17. But predating that, I was a tall ship sailor, and I was like planning on being the captain of a ship. Like, I have like lives, way too many lives in my life.
You're not someone who craves a lot of convention in their life.
Yeah, like routine. And,
yeah, and like I'm going to go to school and then become a
well, it's I think
dental assistant, and then
I think a part of me did want to do that. That was my goal. I was like, I love science. Honestly, I'd love to be creative in science and come up with ideas that would actually help people. I actually came up, even being in this neuroscientist community, I did come up with an idea that I think could help people. And I'm like, damn it, I should go back to school and do this. But I only have one life, and now I'm limited by the fact that I actually. One thing I forgot to mention in my head is I lost the ability to read for a while.
Oh.
So I had to relearn how to read. I could see the words, and if you told me, like, spell the word what, I could do it. But if you gave me a sentence and I read it, I couldn't always tell you what the sentence was saying. Because there's so many different processes.
Can you still make music? Can you?
Yeah.
Could you still make music?
Not for a long time. But I slowly got back into it. Like, I could say words.
Yeah.
But I couldn't always read words. Like very well. It would be slow. It's a slow process. I'd have to reread. Like it was like I began even more rehab for that like 2 years ago. Like that's the slowest thing.
Yeah.
To get better was my reading. So I can maybe read one chapter of a book before I have to shut it.
I have screens for like Pro Tools and that kind of thing.
I small doses.
Yeah.
I'm doing way better now, but I can't like to be like a really decent producer, sometimes you just got to be able to like dive into it for like hours and hours and hours. I've been editing my own music videos though in doses. It's a lot of, it's painful in my head, but.
So I hope you don't think I'm prying. I don't mean,
go for it.
I don't mean to ask so many questions. It's just that, honest to God, it's the surprise of listening to this new record and realizing that you're relatively encumbered in your life, you know?
Yeah.
Can we just
dancing and crying.
let's just listen to that. Listen to it.
It's getting emotional. And when you lose yourself, so did I lose control. We will all get out alive, but we'll never be the same. What we're losing, we'll be fighting, 'cause we're dancing, now we're crying.
It's Calgary, Alberta's Kiesza with the title track from her new EP, Dancing and Crying, Volume 1. All right, well, let's do it.
Very, very dramatic, this song.
Why dancing and crying?
Well, I went from dancing literally to crying. It sort of encompasses a lot of the passions and the processing of the loss of my passions. But ultimately, what I've been telling people a lot is that crying actually gave me a similar sensation to dancing in a weird way. Like allowing myself to have really good cries often when I couldn't do anything, it reset me in a similar way emotionally that a good dance would do. I used to go out all the time to process my emotions on the dance floor before I ever did dance music. And I think that's why when I wrote Hideaway, it came very instinctively because I actually really liked dance music. I just never saw myself doing it because I thought of myself as a singer-songwriter, acoustic artist. But there's something really similar about the two. They're both very honest expressions of the body. And you can't have a good dance unless you're really honestly expressing yourself, letting loose and just like releasing your emotion through your body. Whereas same with a good cry, it's very physical and emotional. It's like you connect physically and emotionally in perfect sync with whatever is going on, and you release. It's a release. Both of them are a release. And by the time you get through a good dance or a good cry, you're sort of like the calm after the storm. And you're kind of reset, and you feel really good. And so crying became my dancing. And I honestly, I thought it was going to be 3 months recovery. Then I thought it was going to be 6 months. I ended up getting worse for 1.5 years before I started to get better. So at the 1.5 year mark, I was at my worst, and then that's when things sort of started to turn around. So it was a long road for me. And because I was getting progressively worse, I didn't know that I ever would turn around. I thought maybe it's just going to spiral and then that's it. So I was just preparing myself to lose everything, and I didn't know what that meant. I went to the hospital multiple times thinking I had a stroke. So if you just like think about living that way and not knowing, it's terrifying. My biggest fear was of myself. So of my body just, or my brain just like giving up. So I still can't really write about that, like the whole head injury. I can't write about the pain. I've tried. I have one funny. I turned it into a funny song. It's a swear word. I don't know if I can swear on this, but
Go ahead.
my head's fucked up. It's called. But I haven't put that one out. It's
too hard.
It really is tough. Like I can't, like I start thinking about it. I'm like thinking about it now and I'm like swelling up. Like it's the pain, the level of pain that I felt like no one should ever feel.
I understand. Yeah.
It's almost, you can almost laugh at how painful it is. But yeah, like I'm like, I just like, it's like I don't want to go back there. Yeah.
And don't I have
so,
we gotta block the tissues here. 1 second, I got it here. 1 second.
I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay.
It was on the
but
floor.
just in case, yeah.
There. Look. There you go.
Thank you. Just in case I need it.
Let's.
But yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
Dancing and crying. Right. The title let us down.
Well, you've just been so generous. You've just been so generous in talking to me about this. You know?
I really do. I know a lot of people are going through so much right now, especially even like after the whole pandemic. Mm-hmm. Like the amount of trauma that was for a lot of people internally, and they still haven't been able to process it externally. I went through a lot of rehab and like I devoted my time to learning about trauma and getting over PTSD, because PTSD was this like layering. I had layered PTSD. So when your brain's injured, anything you do that triggers your brain to freak out, it adds that layer. So the one time I did the dishes and I dropped a dish and it shattered, anytime I looked at dishes after that, my brain would just trigger. would start swelling up. It was crazy. And that was a PTSD layer. And some neurologist taught me that you have to actually reteach your brain. You have to go through it and you have to reteach your brain that it's okay. So I actually ended up just doing so much learning on how to recover from PTSD that I'm a bit of an expert now, honestly. I'm like, you got issues, come to me. Like, I might as well be a therapist.
What did making this record give you?
It gave me what I never had, in the sense that Hideaway happened so fast that I had to rush the first album. And I was a songwriter at the time, and I didn't have time to really get involved as much in the musical aspect of the production. It was just like the producer was like, okay, here's another track. I wrote the song. And then on to the next. So I was really rushed. And then the next album Crave was in the midst of my recovery, and I basically collected songs that I already pre-wrote.
Yeah. I'm realizing that now. And
then I added on, and I was like, it was like the 80s songs that didn't quite fit the 90s vibe, but I was like, I have a lot of these cool 80s sounding songs. Like, maybe I'll just go with that.
Yeah.
And then, but it wasn't even like dance music. It was a different sound totally. But I was like, you know what? It's happy. That's great. That works for me, because nothing was happy at the time. So I put out the happiest record ever. And I never had like time to just sit and be like, what do I want the music, like not just the songwriting, but the music to sound like? And this new river of music, in volume 1, it indicates that there's more coming. There's multiple volumes in the works. It is basically the merging of my folk singer-songwriter.
There's some banjos here. There's some folk melodies.
I had to argue with Sugar Jesus, my producer, to put the banjo on Heaven Ain't Calling. Because he's like, you can't put banjo on a house track. And I'm like, yes, you can. I'm doing it. And then now everyone's like, I love the banjo. And he's like, yeah, of course.
Okay,
right.
so it's the marrying of your early days as a folk singer in Calgary and as a singer-songwriter with the new life you have?
Well, it's really taking the side of me that I saw as more of a personal side, that I write music literally for myself. It helps me process. But they're so vulnerable that I don't think to even put these songs out. But I realize that these songs are the most honest songs, and that it's a shame not to share them with the world, or share this side of me. And this is the side that has been through the worst and overcome so many obstacles, that like I should share this side with the world. But also my fan base loves dance music. So I was thinking like maybe I'd start another side project with a new name and like put out my folk stuff. But I was like, you know what? Why can't I just put the two together and add more depth to the dance space, you know? I don't know. I think it needs that anyways. More artist driven. It's very DJ driven. And honestly, dance music has very few dancers at the forefront. Like most people who do dance music actually don't dance. So there's a whole different experience actually dancing to the music you make. Like I'll make a song and then I dance to it to see if I actually like to dance to it.
Wow, okay. Yeah. Right.
I test with other dancers. I'm like, hey, can you dance to this? Let's dance. So yeah. But I had time. There's time in this music. And even when I was ready to put out the first volume, I wasn't ready to go out to the world yet. I ended up waiting a whole other year.
Why?
So I just wasn't ready. I didn't know what I wanted to do, like with the visuals. I didn't want to rush it. I didn't feel the need. And I wanted to be just in love with the process as everyone else was. And when I started putting the music out, I wanted to actually be as involved as possible. A lot of times you put the music out and then it's like, okay, it's out, on to the next.
Yeah.
I want the launch of it to be just the beginning. So I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I ended up just going on this whole journey of nothingness and reading like the Tao Te Ching and all this like ancient philosophical literature, and then being like
exploring internally and exploring spiritually. Yeah.
Yeah, and then being like, well, maybe I just will do nothing and then just see what happens. And after that decision, I ended up moving to Norway for 6 months and living in a cabin with no Wi-Fi.
Right. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. And so one song that's going to be on the second volume was literally, we got snowed into the studio and had to dig our way out. And it sounds like a snowstorm. Like there's real life and real journeys and living in this music.
There's a real life and real journeys and living in you. Like you've had you've had a life. So, do you mind if I ask how old you're?
I'm 35.
You're 35,
Yeah.
and you've had a life already, man.
I know, and I feel like it's just starting to. I'm like, oh man, this is a lot of life for one life already, and I'm like not that old. So I'm like, what is coming?
I hope you get some rest coming up. Is what I hope for.
Well, no, I've had a lot of rest.
You're right. You had enough rest. I hope some boredom. I hope boredom or
Boredom is so funny you say that because I always tell people that like people don't realize the value of boredom.
Mm-hmm.
We actually we take boredom for granted, but it's actually something that we need. We actually need to sit with ourselves and be okay with the emptiness and the space.
I think about how bored I was in the 90s. I think about how, like, when I was in think about this. I'm not joking around. Like, when I was in a doctor's office in the 90s or the early 2000s.
Oh, just sitting there.
I would just have to sit there. I'd be bored to tears.
Hours.
I can't remember the last time I was bored.
See?
It's no good.
But you actually, like, literally, you connect with the ether in the space between everything. So everyone just fills up the space with their TikToks and their phones and music. And people don't even fall asleep now without having, like, the TV on.
Yeah, there's no
like,
solitude.
And you cannot connect. You can't connect with the ether. You need to connect with like you outside of your physical body.
Well,
so
I'll tell you this. I wish you boredom.
I wish you boredom. Thank you. I wish you boredom too.
I wish you deep boredom. Thank you so much for coming in. Lovely to hang out in real life.
Likewise.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
so
in.
much.
I really
Thanks
appreciate it.
for like sharing my whole story.